roads. There are also other kinds of developmental challenges in the landscape, such as development of roads, highways, canal construction in the protected areas. Various other disturbances are disturbing the regular movement and the pattern of wildlife in the area. So it's increasing human-wildlife conflict. Rivers are drying out because of over extraction of water at the source of the birth of the rivers itself. And the global climate change is also having disastrous impact on the landscape. So landslides and flooding have been observed in the last 5-6 years, which is also economically impacting the biodiversity rich coffee plantations in terms of crop being washed out, increased uh, diseases to the coffee plants, and then reduction in production. Already market is not really helping the farmers to make the production profitable. In addition to that, these challenges are also increasing the problems of the farmers in these areas. So these are complex problems, and as I said, the the issue is quite common in the entire landscape that I just talked about, but it's not just limited to that landscape. It's observed in all of Western Ghats. But in the Chikmagalur district, when we did an analysis of tourism specifically, excessive pressure was found in the Mulangiri mountain area, which is a highest peak, which is a popular tourist destination. But it's also very, very important for biodiversity and water requirements. So how is it being addressed? This is the work of Wildcatsy. So they have been working in this area for the last 32 years. So Mulangiri, because it had because it's having the highest pressure for different things, it was not a protected area until 2018. So it was so the group proposed to the government to protect this, to provide a protection status to the mountains through the forest department, and the cabinet also approved it in 2018. Currently the gazettement process is on, and the group is following up on that. And the landscape, we worked on developing a landscape specific tourism policy. Currently the tourism policy is quite standard for the entire state and for the entire country. But the problem is we cannot have the same kind of tourism policy that is there for a city. For example, Mysore can have a different kind of tourism. The same kind of tourism cannot be done in an ecologically sensitive area such as this. So we've been promoting a landscape specific tourism policy, and for that we have done extensive analysis of the kind of landscape this particular area is, the kind of biodiversity and water requirements that it supports. And then we have provided a draft policy to the government, and that's also currently being, to the local government, I mean. So that's also being followed up by the team. And we have also supported streamlining tourism operations in Mulangiri to start as a pilot project to stop the excessive movement of, in a way, to regulate the excessive movement of private vehicles, by providing them parking facilities at the foothill of the mountain. And then we have suggested that either the government or the community-driven tourism the tour operators take the tourists, show the mountains, and bring them back. So which also has a business model where there is that which can be shared with the community, or the government can utilize the same money to improve the area and the protection measures here. Nevertheless, this is this has taken a lot of effort, a lot of time. This is something that is being pursued for the last nearly 15 years, and the change is very, very slow. So land use change in the corridor areas continue to be a major problem in the landscape. So this is the second landscape that I am talking today. So this is the Wonigisi, Wolagisi, and Zayama landscape from West Africa. So Wonigisi and Wolagisi is in Liberia in West Africa, and Zayama is another protected area in Guinea. I'm not going to be talking about Guinea today, but it's a continuous forest patch between in a cross-border area, as you can see from the map here that I've highlighted. So this is a totally contrasting kind of a case here. So Liberia is a very, very economically backward country. The human capital index is very as low as just 0.32. It's just the ranking is 171 out of 174. It's one of the worst performing economic countries as well economically. So it's 149 out of 195 in the ranking. So the human capital index is just better than three other countries in the world. So the country got its independence in 1850. It was a colony of the United States for about 17 years, but it got its independence way earlier than many other countries in the world. But because of consistent civil war in the country, it's not really made any kind of progress economically. So this during the civil war, many people died, thousands of people died, and thousands of people were displaced. During that time, people obviously couldn't buy anything from stores. There was nothing available to buy. They couldn't stop in a place to cultivate an area. So obviously what they saw was what they ate. This is kind of a situation still continues in some of the forested areas. So as part of the project, I visited this landscape recently. The roads are extremely poor, except for a couple or maybe some 3 4 major highways. There are absolutely no roads. Cultivation practices are very, very traditional. People don't have the modern cultivation techniques. Education level is very, very low. There's a high level of deforestation because people follow shifting cultivation methods, and they also follow slash and burn. So the any standing tall trees, standing forests are being burnt out over a period of 1 or 2 years. And then the third year they start cultivating paddy. And once a crop is harvested, that land is abandoned for the next 5 years, and another patch of standing forest is cleared to continue the process. And they come back to the same abandoned land after 5 to 6 years. Due to this, deforestation rate for the livelihood requirements is very, very high. Additionally, hunting is also very high. There's nothing that is left unhunted in the area. The requirements are for feeding the families, livelihood requirements basically. But more surprisingly, one of the surveys from Fauna and Flora International revealed that people also hunt and sell in the local markets for just about $20 per year, and they need that kind of a small income to send their children to school. So there's that kind of high pressure on the biodiversity here. There's also a high level of population growth here. Each family size is about 6 to 7 with 4 to 5 children. So small villages are growing, and as the village size is growing, there's more resource requirement from the forest and more deforestation and more hunting. So this is something that I've been working with the Fauna and Flora International, and this organization has been working in this landscape in the last 10 years. So this is a different year. Obviously the solutions cannot be the same. Solutions have to be different. So what Fauna and Flora International has been doing here is to prioritize protection of the forest. Even some of the forest patches that I just talked about, they do not have the protection status. They are not protected areas yet. So the organization has been working with the government of Liberia to get basically to first and foremost to get the protection of the protection status for the land, and also to provide the community rights, the land rights for the communities. The Liberia as a country promises land rights to every citizen of the country. So the organization has been prioritizing that and has been working with the government on that. So currently the situation is like almost 40 to 50% of the country, I guess. My number might be wrong, but almost like nearly half of the country has been uh, given out by the government on concession to many of the private mining and the oil and natural gas extraction and these kind of other revenue generation, but destruction practices. And rest of the half, more or less, rest of the half, international conservation organizations are working to protect. The government is not interested really. There is forest department, but there's no frontline staff really monitoring what's happening to control encroachment or to control deforestation. There's nobody. There are one or two individuals for maybe 1,000 square kilometers. So literally there is no enforcement. So what FFI is helping with is to train the community members to patrol the area, to reduce hunting activities, to reduce encroachment activities. They're also actively working with the community on various fronts. So first of all, because there's no education, the community skill development is very, very important. There's heavy investment of time, effort, and money to build the community skills here. And to empower them to take care, to patrol, to have some small local enterprises. They also grow coffee and cocoa here, but we understand that the quality needs substantial improvement. We've been supporting them to develop these kind of small enterprises to build to grow high quality coffee and cocoa so that they don't have to continue deforestation. Uh, so we're also exploring incentivizing conservation efforts by the communities. This includes selling carbon credits, but that's a work that has to go through several bureaucratic levels. So it's going on for the last 5 years. So it has almost reached the last stages now. So the plan is to sell carbon credits from this forest and then share the profits with the government and the communities so that they take interest in saving the forest and reducing deforestation and also reducing hunting activities. There's also microfinance work is one of the major work that we're doing. So what is kind of prevailing in this country and also in other African countries is that there are some small informal banking system called village savings banking systems that are existing in these kind of community areas. So what FFI does is to give small fund to those kind of the savings, the village savings account, and that becomes a rolling fund. People take small loans from that fund, and then they continue the activities that they want on the condition that it is wildlife friendly, and then it is forest friendly, and it is biodiversity friendly. It cannot be used for something destructive. And they return that amount with some interest, and the interest amount goes towards patrol cost, which becomes a sustainable fund by itself. And then the rest of the principal becomes a rolling fund. This mechanism we've been trying extensively in other areas in Africa as well, so that the community efforts can continue with or without FFI as well. So FFI works on project basis. What happens after the end of the project basis is something that we are very, very mindful of. So now we've seen two different case studies from two different continents, two different countries. Some issues are common, but many are not common. So first of all, in Chikmagalur, in India, this high economic development, high economic opportunities. It's considered as one of the attractive countries for economic growth. So in a way, that economic growth is seen uh, causing different kinds of unexpected kind of a challenge in the biodiversity rich landscape. But in the case of Liberia, there's no disposable income for something as low as 17 or 20 US dollars per year. People are hunting. So poverty is a main issue over here in Liberia. So two different economical contexts, but nevertheless, there is high pressure on the nature and biodiversity. The issues are very, very complex. So many people are involved. How do we solve this kind of complex issues in different kind of a landscape, different kind of people, different interests? It's very challenging. Human population is growing in both the countries. It may not be really comparable, but it's growing in an alarming rate. And consumption of wildlife is something that is quite common. But the only difference is that in India, there is strict enforcement against wildlife crime, whereas in Liberia, there are rules and laws and regulations, but there's no enforcement. So consumption is a practice, consumption of wildlife is a culture, and it's a livelihood, and there's no option. We as international organization, in my opinion, currently we're not really in a position to offer. I mean, there has been different projects, there has been a lot of money, a lot of work that is going on, but despite that, It I don't think it's any time in the near future it's possible to stop immediately, bring an end to hunting activities in Liberia or anywhere in West Africa. So wildlife trade, whether it is in the local market or in the international market, it's very, very high in both the countries. So due to these kind of complexities in which we work, conservation is called a wicked problem. There's so many stakeholders with different kind of interests. Often these interests are very, very conflicting. How to bring everybody to the same table, and when everybody is in the same table, how do we get consensus towards conservation, which is not really a profitable thing? So how do we do it? And then conservation, we're trying to now, in the last few years, many international forums and international organizations have been trying to make conservation profitable through sale of carbon credits, enterprises, sustainable financing, and private sectors are also, some of them are also getting involved. The challenge is conservation is not really a profit-making mechanism. It's something that has to be done for the benefit of the larger society, for everybody, for people, for wildlife, and for the benefit of the planet. And how do we make it profitable? Even if we make it profitable, it cannot compete with the private sector, which works with a profit motive. So it's not really attractive, even if it is profitable for the people. So it becomes very challenging to work in these kind of conditions. So success is very slow. It's a baby step. It's very slow and very small. It takes a very long-term effort. So there are many trade-offs, many compromises involved in decision making in these kind of scenarios. So what compromise do we choose? What trade-off do we choose? And how big are these compromises? Is it compromising the interest of wildlife itself? How do we make these decisions? It's very important to be considerate of these issues. And finally, conservation professionals who are working across the globe, that many I have met, very passionate, very dedicated, very committed, but they're underpaid or not paid. So how would their interests be taken care of? So how can somebody sustain without being paid, without being able to pay their own bills? And it requires a lot of money and time and effort, a lot of commitment, good leadership skills, dedication, diplomacy skills, patience, and consistency. So these are the challenges. How can any individual sustain in this kind of a situation with so much of commitment in the long term? Is very challenging. That's why it's called a wicked problem. Nevertheless, it's important to be an optimist, and optimism is the key to do anything. And we have also seen some of the successes. It's not that everything has been a failure and everything things have not worked out. For example, Wildcat Sea in Chikmagalur has done some tremendous work, has stopped many developmental projects such as long-running mining activities in protected areas, and they have secured the highest protection status for Badra Tiger Reserve. The tiger numbers have increased in the area. They worked extensively with the government and politicians and every stakeholder in the landscape. Fauna and Flora International also has done some amazing work. The gibbon species that you're seeing on the screen is called cow-wit gibbon, which was considered to have gone extinct until it was rediscovered in 2002 by the scientists of Fauna and Flora International. Today, there are about 100 individuals remaining in Vietnam, in the bordering China, and that's the only area where they're continuing. The population is slowly increasing, and this is a success story of Fauna and Flora International. So I guess optimism is the key, and it's important that we keep going. So that's it from me. Thank you for this opportunity to share these experiences. If there are any questions, then I'm happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Mrunmayee. That was fantastic, very crisp as well. So